Hi there everyone, welcome back to Dandelion Delphi tutorials. Today we're going to look at another OOP question, and this was from the final of 2017, so you will find it in question 2.1 as the paper then consisted only of 3 questions. But at the end of the year you can find this question in question 3.1 since your question paper will have 4 questions. These older papers are brilliant to practice with since they are a little bit longer for this question. So there is more that you can practice with. So before we start with our OOP question, we first need to have a look at what is the provided code, especially for the attributes of this class. We can see there is a string here for the name of the certificate holder. The expiry date, we'll have to double check the data type because it could be a date data type. And then we have a security code, which is a randomly selected hexadecimal value. So we would expect that to be a string variable as well. And then the issue number, again, we're going to have to check that data type. Some of the methods have been provided, so take note of those. And also they have given you the system date to be in the following format. So the first question is asking us to write a constructor. And take note of the word receive. There we have our parameters indicated, the name of the certificate holder, the expiry date, security code, as well as the issue number. And all of these parameters will be used to assign values to the different attributes. So here is the signature for my constructor, receiving all those values as parameters. And as we can see here at the top, the name, the expiry date, and the security code was all string values. And then the issue number was an integer. So I would match my parameters with the data type of these attributes. And in my constructor create, remember, F goes first. Make sure that all your fields are on the left and that the appropriate parameters are assigned to them. Parameters on the right, giving my fields or my attributes values on the left. Now try question 2.1.2 yourself and write the method called increase issue number. Press pause, I'll show you the memo soon. You will see that in this instance I don't see the word receive, so there will be no parameter. All we're going to do is we are going to increment the issue number by 1. Since it didn't explain that we are returning a value, this would be a procedure. And it is a mutator because it's making a change to my field F issue number. And remember that this would be public and there are no parameters here. And all I'm doing in this procedure is adding 1 to the field F issue number. Now try question 1.3 and write the method reset expiry date. Press pause and try it yourself. In here, I don't see the word return or result or accessor, so therefore it would also be a procedure, and we are making a change to the field. So here is my procedure reset expiry date, no parameters, and it is a procedure. And this was the provided code. So what we had to do is we had to change the expiry date to 1 year as from today. And the system date for today was assigned for you, so you could assume the date would have this format. So we can copy from character 7 for 4 characters, and that's what I've done in this line. Now I need to get hold of next year's year, so I'm simply going to change it to an integer and add 1 and store that as I year. But now we have to get rid of the old year and insert this new year. So I first use the delete, taking the system date and deleting from character 7 for 4 characters. And then I am changing my expiry date to be what is left in a system date, which would be all the code up to there or the data up to there. And I'm adding my year that I just calculated. Now try question 2.1.4, press pause and try it yourself. We need to check if the expiry date has been reached and then return a Boolean value. So clearly it is a function. I don't see any mention here of using a parameter or the word receive, so therefore no parameters. And here is my function has expired, which is returning a Boolean value. We can compare dates with each other, but they have to be a tDate data type. We can't compare them when they are in strings because the numbers will be compared as in the ASCII table and not as the actual date value. So what I'm doing here is I am checking if the system date of today, by changing it from a string to a date, is greater than or equal to the date of the expiry date. So if today's date is greater than or equal to the expiry date, I will return a true, that it has expired, else I will return a false. This is now the second last question of 2.1. So read carefully and try it yourself. So you need to create the security code, but what was important is that the values 0 to 9 and A to F had to be selected randomly, and that you could have examples where 2 characters or 2 numbers were selected. Very important also that your output will not produce a colon at the end. So since this is not returning a value, but it is actually setting the value for F security code, this will now be a procedure and there were no parameters. So I'm going to initialize my F security code as an empty string, since on the inside of my loop I am building a string. There were many correct solutions in this question. Very important is that any one of these values must be selected randomly. So the numbers shouldn't have a higher possibility than the characters, and you shouldn't always be creating then a random number and then a character. So if I have assigned all the possible values to a string here, and then I'm going to loop 5 times because I need 5 sets of numbers. I am going to pick a random number from 1 to 17. There are 16 possible numbers here. Then I'm going to add to my security code the character in the random number that I selected. For the following character, I'm doing the same. So picking a random number and adding that character. And just before I loop again, I'm going to add my colon. So in this way, it will create 5 sets of random numbers or characters. What would be important in my solution is to delete the last colon because there wasn't a colon at the end of the security code. So therefore, I just deleted from the length for 1 character. Now, they could have made this question a little bit harder to say that you cannot pick the same number twice. And here is very similar code to what I've used above. But what I'm doing here is I am using the length of that string plus 1 to pick random characters from that string. And I am changing the length of the string, and that's why I can't just use 17. Because every time that I select a random number, I am going to delete that random number from my string of characters that I'm selecting from. So every time that a random character is selected, the length of schar will be 1 less. So therefore I'm going to use the length there in my random range plus 1, because remember it excludes the last character. And in this way it would not be possible for me to pick the same character twice, because I'm removing that character from the possible strings of characters the moment that I add it. So finally we need to create the toString. What is important to note here is the labeling, but also all these empty lines that you have to add. Remember, these little brackets here are indicating your attributes. You do not have to produce those brackets. Press pause and try it yourself. So here is my solution for the toString. All you had to do was to add all your attributes here with a #9 before the 2 #13s that will create an enter the first one, and the second one will create the empty line. And remember to enter string F issue number. So remember, this is your time to save and run your program to sort out any syntax errors. Thank you grade 12s for watching Dandelion Delphi tutorials. For more information and rules on OOP, we can go to book 3, and in our next lesson we will implement this object class we created today. Hope to see you soon.